a young woman starved to death in 1976 Germany, not in a war zone or a prison, but in her own home during a series of church-approved rituals. This is the haunting story of Anneliese Michel, a case that continues to provoke intense debate, serving as a poignant touchstone at the confluence of faith, science, and the legal system. Her life tragically concluded after 67 Catholic exorcism rites, leaving behind agonizing questions. Was she truly possessed by malevolent entities? Or was she a victim of severe, untreated mental and neurological illness, exacerbated by a fervent religious environment? This video embarks on an investigative journey into the complex circumstances surrounding Anneliese Michel's life and death, meticulously examining the progression of events that led to her tragic end. It will trace her early life, the onset of her illness, the desperate search for a cure, the controversial exorcisms, and the profound legal and societal aftermath. The objective is to provide a thorough, accurate, and neutral account, acknowledging the profound human drama at its core and the lasting impact this singular case has had on both religious practice and public perception. The belief in and practice of casting out evil spirits is deeply embedded in human history, extending far beyond formalized Christian rites. Across diverse cultures and epochs, narratives of spiritual affliction and expulsion rituals have shaped societal understanding of suffering and healing. From the ancient Mesopotamians, who believed sickness was often caused by demonic possession requiring ritualistic cleansing, to ancient Egypt's elaborate incantations against malevolent spirits, the idea of spiritual intrusion has been a consistent human response to unexplained suffering. In the Hindu tradition, concepts like bhuta bada describe afflictions by spirits and ghosts, often treated with specific mantras and rituals by priests. Similarly, in Islam, the practice of ruqya involves reciting verses from the Quran to expel malevolent jinn or counteract black magic. These practices, while varied, share a common thread: the conviction that unseen forces can inhabit and torment individuals, necessitating ritualistic intervention. Within Christianity, the casting out of demons is central to the ministry of Jesus in the Gospels, lending strong biblical precedent. Throughout the Middle Ages, exorcism became a more formalized practice within the Catholic Church, often intertwined with beliefs about witchcraft and heresy. The pivotal moment for Catholic exorcism came with the Ritual Romanum of 1614, the official liturgical book that codified the specific prayers, blessings, and procedures for the major exorcism. This text, intended to standardize practice and prevent abuses, became the definitive guide for Catholic exorcists for centuries. However, the post-Second Vatican Council era, starting in the 1960s, brought significant theological and cultural shifts to the Catholic Church. While the Second Vatican Council era emphasized engagement with the modern world and scientific advancements, including psychology and psychoanalysis, the practice of exorcism became a point of tension. Traditionalists often sought to preserve the rite as a vital defense against evil, while reformers questioned its relevance in an increasingly secular and scientifically informed society. This period saw a decline in officially sanctioned exorcisms as the Church sought to appear modern and avoid sensationalism. Yet, paradoxically, there was also a quiet resurgence in demand in certain conservative regions and among traditionalist clergy. This complex historical backdrop, marked by both ancient traditions and modern challenges, formed the turbulent waters into which Anneliese Michel's case would tragically plunge, forcing the Church to confront its past and adapt to a new era. Anna Elisabeth Michel was born on September 21, 1952, in Leibelfing, Bavaria, West Germany. She was raised in a profoundly Roman Catholic family alongside her three sisters by her parents, Joseph and Anna. This was a region where traditional Bavarian family life revolved around a strong conservatism, a deep, unwavering faith in the Roman Catholic Church, and a belief in strict discipline, often with the ideal of having many children. Attending Mass twice a week was not just a custom, it was a cornerstone of their existence. This deeply devout environment, characteristic of rural Bavaria, formed the bedrock of her worldview and profoundly influenced how she and her family would interpret her later struggles. Her university classmates would later describe her as withdrawn and very religious. Anneliese's ordeal began at the age of 16 in 1968 when she experienced her first severe convulsion. She was subsequently diagnosed with psychosis caused by temporal lobe epilepsy, and shortly thereafter also received a diagnosis of depression, leading to her treatment at a psychiatric hospital. Symptoms of temporal lobe epilepsy, a condition Anneliese was diagnosed with, can include a range of unsettling experiences. Imagine sudden overwhelming feelings of fear or joy, a profound sense of déjà vu, or even strange odors or tastes that aren't really there. More intense seizures can manifest as staring spells, repetitive lip-smacking, chewing or picking motions, often accompanied by a disorienting lack of awareness of surroundings. These are not merely physical tremors, they are profound alterations of consciousness that can be terrifying for both the sufferer and those witnessing them. Post-seizure, individuals may experience confusion, difficulty speaking, memory gaps, and excessive sleepiness. It's a medical reality that, in certain cultural contexts, can be tragically misinterpreted as something far more sinister, as seen in cases like Giannati syndrome, where similar TLE manifestations are believed to be caused by spiritual possession. Despite 5 years of consistent psychiatric medication, including anticonvulsion drugs such as Dilantin and Tegretol, and the regular consumption of antipsychotics, her condition showed no improvement. In fact, her symptoms progressively worsened. By 1973, she began to experience severe depression, hallucinated during prayer, and reported hearing voices that told her she was damned and would rot in hell. Her behavior became increasingly disturbing, including displays of aggression, self-injury, drinking her own urine, and eating insects. She also developed an intense intolerance of Christian sacred objects such as the crucifix, and reportedly experienced a strong aversion to a shrine, claiming the soil burned like fire, which was interpreted as a sign of demonic influence. Anneliese herself, in a poignant letter to Father Alt, wrote, "I am nothing. Everything about me is vanity. What should I do? I have to improve. You pray for me." And once told him, "I want to suffer for other people, but this is so cruel." This profound suffering, coupled with the perceived failure of conventional medical treatment, cultivated a sense of futility and desperation. Psychiatric care in 1970s Germany, particularly in rural areas, suffered from a lack of standardized disease classification, isolated asylums hindering knowledge exchange, and severe overcrowding. The lingering trauma from the National Socialist regime's horrific euthanasia programs against the mentally ill also fostered public reluctance to seek psychiatric help. This systemic vacuum meant that even dedicated doctors struggled to provide comprehensive, integrated care for complex conditions like Anneliese's, inadvertently pushing desperate families towards alternative solutions. This became the compelling driver for her family's agonizing decision to seek alternative faith-based solutions. Anneliese Michel's initial diagnosis of temporal lobe epilepsy and depression was a crucial starting point for understanding her deteriorating condition through a medical lens. Temporal lobe epilepsy, often called the spiritual epilepsy, is known for producing complex, often bizarre symptoms that can be easily misinterpreted as supernatural. Patients may experience sudden, overwhelming feelings of dread or euphoria, vivid hallucinations, dissociative states, and automatic behaviors. Critically, these seizures can trigger intense religious experiences, hyper-religiosity, or even the conviction of being chosen or possessed. Beyond the neurological, modern psychology offers frameworks that shed light on Anneliese's tragic decline. Religious psychosis, a subtype of psychosis where delusions and hallucinations are deeply embedded in religious themes, perfectly describes her reported belief that she was damned and heard voices from hell. Her self-injury, aggression, and intolerance of sacred objects could be manifestations of severe psychotic decompensation, exacerbated by the psychological pressure of her illness and her family's fervent beliefs. Even more profoundly, Anneliese's case presents a chilling example of shared psychotic disorder, historically known as folie à deux. This rare psychiatric condition occurs when a healthy person, or group of people, develops delusions similar to those of a person with a psychotic disorder with whom they are in close contact. In Anneliese's case, it's plausible that her intense psychotic experiences, interpreted through a strong religious framework, could have been unknowingly absorbed and validated by her deeply devout parents and the priests. Their shared conviction that she was possessed rather than medically ill could have created a self-reinforcing loop of belief where each new symptom was viewed as further proof of demonic activity, tragically preventing rational medical intervention. Another relevant concept is scrupulosity, a form of obsessive-compulsive disorder, OCD, characterized by pathological guilt or anxiety about moral or religious issues. In highly devout individuals like Anneliese, scrupulosity can manifest as an overwhelming fear of sin, damnation, and impurity, leading to ritualistic behaviors and extreme self-reproach. This intense internal struggle, combined with a fervent belief system, could have made her particularly vulnerable to the suggestion of demonic influence, causing immense moral injury, a profound psychological wound resulting from actions or inactions that violate one's deeply held moral beliefs. Expert commentary further illuminates these complexities. The renowned psychiatrist Richard Knoll, known for his work on the history of psychiatry, has extensively written about the psychological underpinnings of possession phenomena, emphasizing the role of cultural expectation and suggestibility. Similarly, Dr. Karl Meyer, a leading forensic psychiatrist, might highlight how the intense emotional environment of the exorcisms, combined with Anneliese's underlying mental illness, could have led to increasingly bizarre and self-destructive behaviors, interpreted by those around her as definitive proof of possession rather than symptoms of untreated illness. This psychological lens does not diminish the suffering of Anneliese Michel or the sincerity of her family and the priests. Instead, it offers a crucial scientific framework for understanding how belief, mental illness, and social dynamics tragically converge, leading to a preventable death. As Anneliese's condition worsened despite years of medical intervention, she and her family became firmly convinced that she was possessed by a demon. This was not merely a shift in belief, it was a profound reinforcement of pre-existing worldviews when conventional methods proved ineffective. The family's strict Roman Catholic upbringing in Bavaria provided fertile ground for spiritual interpretations of her symptoms. When medical science seemed to offer no relief, behaviors like her intolerance to religious objects or hearing voices which align with traditional Catholic criteria for possession further solidified their conviction. Driven by this conviction, her family repeatedly appealed to the Catholic Church for an exorcism. Initially, their requests were met with rejection by several priests, who instead recommended continued medical treatment and informed the family that official exorcisms required the explicit permission of the local bishop. These initial rejections were rooted in a cautious adherence to protocol and perhaps genuine skepticism, urging continued medical observation before considering such an extreme spiritual intervention. However, in September 1974, a local priest named Father Anstalt, who had visited Anneliese, declared that she didn't look like an epileptic and that he did not observe her experiencing seizures. By July to August 1975, Father Alt became convinced she was suffering from genuine demonic possession and strongly urged Bishop Joseph Stangl of Würzburg to allow an exorcism. Soon after, Father Reuderwick, another priest, visited Anneliese with Father Alt and wrote a detailed report of her case to Bishop Stangl, arguing in favor of genuine demonic possession and urging the bishop to allow them to perform the major rite of exorcism. Bishop Stangl, who was the Bishop of Würzburg since 1957, eventually granted Salvatorian priest Arnold Renz permission to conduct an exorcism according to the Roman ritual. Crucially, he ordered total secrecy surrounding the rites. This decision, made after careful consideration of the priest's assessments and the family's fervent belief, marked a pivotal turning point in Anneliese's fate. The precise motivations for Bishop Stangl's change of heart are complex. It was likely a combination of the detailed and persuasive reports from Alt and Roderick, coupled with the immense pressure from the desperate family and the perceived failure of medical science. His order for secrecy underscores an acute awareness of the controversial nature of authorizing such an act in modern Germany. The motivations of the key figures were complex. Joseph and Anna Michel, Anneliese's parents, were not malicious. They were devout individuals caught in an unimaginable situation. Their deep faith, rooted in traditional Bavarian Catholicism, meant that when medical science seemed to offer no relief, they genuinely believed they were entrusting their daughter's fate to the Church, seeking a spiritual remedy for what they perceived as a spiritual affliction. Their agonizing journey from desperately seeking conventional medical help to their absolute conviction in demonic possession was a desperate act of love, albeit one with tragic consequences. The priests, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz, were driven by a profound adherence to Catholic doctrine regarding exorcism. The Ritual Romanum, the official Catholic text guiding exorcisms, outlines specific procedures including prayers, the use of holy water, the cross, and even physical restraint to prevent harm. For instance, the ritual explicitly states the exorcist should not believe readily that the demon is present simply because the possessed person speaks in a strange voice or performs acts of an unusual strength. It lays out strict criteria for discerning genuine possession from mental illness. Seasoned exorcists often used this text as a starting point, adapting it as they saw fit. They genuinely believed they were performing a sacred duty, saving Anneliese's soul from malevolent entities. The first exorcism session was performed on September 24, 1975. Over the next approximately 10 months, a staggering total of 67 exorcism sessions were conducted, typically 1 or 2 each week, each lasting up to 4 hours. During these grueling rites, the priests utilized the Roman ritual, reciting prayers, using holy water and the cross. Anneliese was often physically restrained to prevent her from harming herself or others. Critically, during this intense period of spiritual intervention, Anneliese's parents ceased consulting doctors at her request, relying solely on the exorcism rites. This decision proved fatal. Although she was prescribed antipsychotic drugs, she reportedly consumed them frequently until shortly before her death, yet her symptoms continued to worsen dramatically, including growling obscenities, screaming guttural curses, and raving wildly. The audio tapes recorded during these sessions capture chilling sounds, guttural growls, screams, and what the priests claimed were demons arguing. These alleged entities identified themselves as figures like Lucifer, the fallen angel, representing ultimate rebellion against God, Cain, the first murderer, symbolizing fratricide and primal sin, Judas Iscariot, the betrayer of Christ, signifying ultimate treachery, Nero, the persecuting Roman emperor, embodying tyranny and anti-Christian brutality, and an evil priest named Fleischmann, representing corruption within the sacred. The choice and manifestation of these names, steeped in theological and historical significance, added a chilling, symbolic layer to their conviction, interpreting Anneliese's struggle as a cosmic battle against profound evil. Toward the end of her life, Anneliese began to refuse food. The increasing number and intensity of the exorcisms, starkly juxtaposed with Anneliese's severe physical deterioration, created a powerful sense of impending tragedy. The total secrecy surrounding the rites further isolated Anneliese, sealing her fate as medical care was tragically abandoned. The chronological unfolding of the Anneliese Michel case reveals an accelerating feedback loop between belief and physical deterioration. Anneliese's medical symptoms stemming from psychosis and epilepsy were interpreted by her family and the priests as irrefutable proof of demonic possession. This interpretation, in turn, reinforced the perceived necessity for more and more exorcisms. As her symptoms intensified and she progressively stopped eating, these physical manifestations were tragically seen as further evidence of demonic resistance, accelerating the cycle. The physical toll of the exorcisms, such as broken knees from continuous genuflections, combined with the abandonment of medical care, directly contributed to her severe physical decline, culminating in malnutrition, dehydration, and pneumonia. The belief system itself, rather than offering a cure, became a fatal barrier to life-saving medical intervention. This approach highlights the dangers of ideological rigidity when confronted with complex human suffering, and illustrates how a cycle of misinterpretation can lead to catastrophic consequences. On July 1, 1976, Anneliese Michel died at the age of 23 in her home. The autopsy report stated the cause of death as malnutrition and dehydration, directly resulting from nearly a year in a state of near starvation while the rites were performed. At the time of her death, she weighed a mere 66 pounds, suffered broken knees from continuous genuflections, was unable to move without assistance, and had contracted pneumonia. The state prosecutor later maintained that her death could have been prevented as late as 1 week before she died. In 1976, following an investigation, the state formally charged Anneliese's parents, Joseph and Anna Michel, and the two priests, Father Ernst Alt and Father Arnold Renz, with negligent homicide. This was an unprecedented legal event, marking the first official and public exorcism case in Germany in approximately 50 years, and uniquely the only known case to have been recorded on audio tapes. The trial commenced on March 30, 1978, in the District Court of Aschaffenburg, drawing intense interest from both German and international media, with the courtroom seating area primarily occupied by media personnel. During the proceedings, doctors testified unequivocally that Anneliese was not possessed, asserting that her manifestations were purely the psychological effects of her strict religious upbringing and her epilepsy. The defense, with the parents represented by famed Nuremberg trials defense attorney Erich Schmidt-Leichner, argued that the exorcism was legal and protected under the German constitution's guarantee of religious freedom. Schmidt-Leichner's strategy hinged on establishing the religious belief as a legitimate medical alternative within their specific worldview, implying that the parents acted out of sincere conviction, not malice. The Catholic Church reportedly covered the legal fees for the priest's defense. In a dramatic turn, the defense played tapes recorded at the exorcism sessions, sometimes featuring what was claimed to be demons arguing, to assert their claim that Michel was genuinely possessed. It is also noteworthy that a psychiatrist testifying against the defense suggested Father Alt had an abnormal personality or possibly undiagnosed psychosis or schizophrenia. In April 1978, the court delivered its verdict. Anneliese's parents and the two priests were convicted of negligent homicide. They received suspended prison sentences, 6 months reduced to 3 years of probation, and were ordered to share the legal costs. Notably, the prosecution had initially recommended no jail time for the parents, acknowledging they had suffered enough, a mitigating legal factor in German penal law. The Anneliese Michel case achieved unprecedented notoriety largely due to the existence of the audio recordings and the highly publicized trial. These tapes, initially presented as legal evidence, quickly became a powerful tool for media sensationalism, transforming a private tragedy into a public spectacle and an enduring modern horror narrative. The media's focus on the demons arguing and the found footage aesthetic amplified the supernatural interpretation, often overshadowing the complex medical realities of Anneliese's condition. News headlines like "The Exorcism That Ended in Death" proliferated, capitalizing on public fascination. This phenomenon aligns with broader cultural trends of the 1970s, where films like The Exorcist generated widespread media frenzy and public discussion around demonic possession, effectively blurring the lines between scientific understanding and popular superstition. The intense media coverage and the widespread availability of the exorcism tapes directly influenced public perception, solidifying a lasting cultural impact that continues to fuel belief in demonic possession even in the face of medical explanations. The ability to hear the alleged demons allowed for the construction of a powerful modern myth around Anneliese Michel, perpetuating a narrative that frequently prioritizes sensationalism and the supernatural over the profound human tragedy and medical complexities involved. This sensationalism further translated into popular culture, directly inspiring films like The Exorcism of Emily Rose and Requiem, which, while fictionalized, ingrained aspects of Anneliese's story into the collective consciousness, often reinforcing the supernatural rather than the scientific interpretation. The legal and ethical dimensions of the Anneliese Michel case are central to its narrative power. The conviction for negligent homicide, despite the defense's invocation of religious freedom, established a critical legal precedent in post-war Germany. It affirmed the state's paramount duty to protect life and ensure basic medical care even when religious beliefs dictate otherwise. This was particularly significant for a new democratic Germany striving to distinguish itself from its authoritarian past, where the state's authority was absolute. The Church's decision to fund the priest's defense, and more importantly the subsequent retraction of the possession claim by German bishops and the 1999 revision of the Ritual Romanum to mandate medical assessment and allow for cessation of exorcism if medical attention is refused, clearly indicate an institutional response to mitigate damage, adapt to modern legal frameworks, and integrate scientific understanding. The public nature of the trial and its tragic, legally binding outcome forced the Catholic Church to re-evaluate its approach to exorcism and its interaction with modern medicine. This case became a critical juncture in the ongoing societal debate about the boundaries between religious freedom and state intervention, particularly concerning medical care for vulnerable individuals. It directly contributed to a more cautious, medically informed and interdisciplinary approach to exorcism within the global Catholic Church, demonstrating how a singular tragedy can catalyze significant institutional policy changes. The Anneliese Michel case might seem like a relic of the past, a unique confluence of historical circumstance and deeply held belief. Yet, its echoes resonate chillingly in contemporary society. Even today, tragic deaths due to medical neglect driven by religious beliefs, often involving exorcisms or faith healing, continue to occur globally. From cases in Kenya where individuals have died during purported exorcisms to similar incidents reported in South Korea and parts of the United States, the tension between spiritual intervention and medical necessity remains a deadly one. Despite advancements in psychiatry and neuroscience, the demand for exorcisms has reportedly surged in various parts of the world since the early 2000s. While precise global statistics are hard to pinpoint, anecdotal evidence and reports from dioceses suggest a significant increase in requests, particularly in regions of Europe, Africa, and Latin America. This resurgence is often attributed to a renewed emphasis on the spiritual realm within religious discourse, a sense of increased spiritual warfare, and perhaps a general distrust in secular institutions. Even high-ranking religious figures have contributed to this discourse. Father Gabriele Morth, who served as the chief exorcist of the Diocese of Rome for decades until his death in 2016, famously claimed to have performed tens of thousands of exorcisms. He was a vocal proponent of the reality of demonic possession and frequently challenged secular explanations, embodying a strong traditionalist viewpoint within the Church. More recently, Pope Francis has made numerous public statements acknowledging the reality of Satan and spiritual evil, reminding the faithful of the constant battle against malevolent forces. These pronouncements, while within Catholic doctrine, can also contribute to an environment where spiritual interpretations of suffering are foregrounded, potentially impacting how individuals and families approach mental and physical illness. On the other side of the debate, figures like Dr. Felicitas Goodman, an anthropologist who controversially supported the possession theory in Anneliese's case, argued for the validity of cross-cultural ecstatic and trance states as evidence of spiritual phenomena. Conversely, modern psychiatrists like Dr. Richard Gallagher, while acknowledging the complexities, often present a medical and psychological counter-narrative, stressing the importance of empirical evidence and the dangers of misinterpreting treatable conditions. The Anneliese Michel case thus serves as a stark historical precedent for a contemporary challenge. How do societies and religious institutions navigate the complex and often dangerous intersection of fervent belief, vulnerability, and medical science in the 21st century? The Anneliese Michel case remains a potent and complex narrative, continuing to resonate as a profound study in the intersection of faith, science, and human tragedy. It serves as a stark reminder of the delicate balance required when addressing suffering that defies easy categorization. The case highlights a profound echo chamber of belief and isolation that surrounded Anneliese. Her family and community became convinced she was possessed, while medical professionals testified she was not. The exorcisms themselves were performed in total secrecy. This secrecy, ordered by Bishop Stangl, was not merely about avoiding scandal, but also about creating an isolated environment where the religious interpretation could flourish unchallenged. In a rural, traditionally Catholic Bavarian community, the family's convictions, supported by local priests, likely formed an insular system of belief. External medical advice was initially rejected and then actively abandoned. This isolation prevented critical counter-perspectives from penetrating the family's and priests' belief system, leading to a tragic lack of intervention. This highlights a universal theme: how isolation combined with fervent belief can lead to catastrophic outcomes, particularly when mental illness is involved. Anneliese's case, tragically, was not unique. Throughout history, and even in contemporary times, there have been documented cases of individuals, including children, dying due to medical neglect driven by religious beliefs, underscoring a persistent tension between faith and evidence-based care. The case also concerns the aftershocks of modernity and institutional adaptation. It occurred in 1970s Germany, a period of profound social and political reform and evolving youth culture, marked by secularization trends. The Catholic Church itself was undergoing significant changes post-Vatican II, striving to align itself with modern science and accepting fields like psychology and psychoanalysis. However, there was also a rising demand for exorcisms during this period, creating an internal struggle within the Church between traditionalists and modernizers. The Anneliese Michel case can therefore be viewed as a dramatic manifestation of the broader societal and theological shifts occurring in post-World War II Germany. The traditional, deeply religious Bavarian context clashed with emerging secularization and scientific advancements. The Church's internal debate about exorcism and science underscores its struggle to adapt to these changing times. The tragic outcome of Anneliese's case likely served as a stark catalyst for the Church to formalize and modernize its approach to exorcism, integrating medical and psychological evaluation to prevent similar tragedies. This demonstrates an institutional response to a public crisis. The Church's later reforms, mandating expert panels and medical presence during exorcisms, can be presented as a direct consequence, emphasizing the lasting impact of Anneliese's death and imbuing the story with a sense of historical significance beyond the immediate tragedy. This offers a powerful conclusion, showing how a single devastating event can force systemic change. The enduring legacy of Anneliese Michel is not simply a horror story, but a deeply human one, offering crucial lessons for contemporary society. Her story forces us to confront uncomfortable questions: where does faith end and delusion begin? And who bears the ultimate responsibility when the boundaries blur? If this story moved you or made you question the lines between belief and reality, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and tap the notification bell so you don't miss future explorations of how faith, science, and human experience collide. And of course, share your thoughts in the comments below. We'd love to hear your perspective. Thank you for watching. Stay curious.